Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. I'm the committee's chair, Councilmember Johnson, and I'm joined today by a quorum of our committee members, Councilmember Orsami, Schrader, and our vice chair, Jenkins. And before us today, we have 3 items on our agenda. The first item is a consent item, so we'll get started with that. It's a federal policy on asylum protections for women fleeing domestic violence. And even though it's on consent, I'm going to ask Ms. Rivera to come up and say a few words on this item and also give us a quick introduction to our visitors today.
Thank you so much, Committee Chair Johnson. My name is Michelle Rivera. I'm the Director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, and I have with me an entourage composed of University of Minnesota Spanish class students led by Kathleen Ganley. So.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Committee Chair Johnson, for providing me with the opportunity to speak briefly on this resolution. Thank you also to IGR Director Jean Raniere for helping with the RCA. I'm here to provide some brief context on the resolution before you today. Our federal government is increasing the barriers to accessing immigration benefits in the United States. One way is through the Department of Justice. The Attorney General's office has the power to take cases that are on appeal through the Board of Immigration Appeals and issue decisions denying applications for relief, including applications for asylum. In one case from 2018, matter of AB, a Salvadoran woman who suffered horrific domestic violence over the course of 15 years, was denied asylum by then Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who stated in his decision that generally claims pertaining to domestic violence perpetrated by non-governmental actors will not qualify for asylum. The resolution before you references the 2014 landmark decision recognizing domestic violence as a basis for asylum in the United States, which matter of AB overturns. It explains how the AB decision undermines asylum protections for victims of domestic violence as well as other people who are subjected to persecution by non-governmental actors. And it also indicates that since the AB decision, asylum grant rates for people from Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, countries experiencing high rates of femicide or female homicide have fallen to 15%. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees states that the AB decision creates a high barrier to asylum to women fleeing domestic violence. The timing of the City Council resolution, if passed, will be especially meaningful. As if passed by the full City Council, it will coincide with the United Nations designated International Day to End Violence Against Women, which is November 25th. The City of Minneapolis has a long history of supporting immigrant communities and protecting asylum seekers. This resolution calls out injustice by condemning the AB decision and compels our federal government to use its power to restore justice and fairness to our asylum system. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that's helpful context. Really appreciate that and all of your work bringing this resolution forward with
Thank you very much.
Team. Are there any comments or questions from committee members on this? Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and move that resolution. All in approval, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. We will now move on to our 2020 legislative agenda and policy positions. Mr. Raniere?
Chairman, thank you very much. I'm Jean Raniere, Director of Government Relations for the city.
And I'll note we've been joined by Council President Bender. Thank you.
The document in front of you is a compilation of the documents we've had to you before. Last time when we met, we had a document that was all underlined and made deletions. We put all those things together based on discussion at committee and meeting with individuals. There are no significant changes between this document and the prior documents you have seen. There are some editorials. For example, we've deleted the old city goals and added the new ones, and we also changed some language dealing with minority owners to people of color and women-owned companies. But other than that, the only other policy thing we added was the funding for housing in the request for the governor's budget of, I think, $240 million.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members on this? Any comments? Well, we just, yes, Mr. Reed?
Mr. Chairman, this is, we're if the vote is to approve this today, it doesn't mean that we're done because things can happen during session, before session. So this is sort of an organic living document. So this is the start. Next couple cycles, we could have other issues come up.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I just want to recognize all the work that goes into this. I mean, this is our third time at committee really talking about these latest updates and changes to this, but so much more work goes on, working with different departments and stakeholders, really vetting this, talking with council members as well. So it feels kind of anticlimactic right now, having this before us in a short little discussion, but really there's so much more work behind this, and I just really want to recognize that, all the good work that goes into it, so that we have this series of updates before us that you've worked to build that consensus and really vet all of these.
Mr. Chairman, also, we're trying to arrange for a delegation meeting before Christmas, and that could be mission impossible. We're going to try. So we can go over this with them and get ready for the session.
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate that. Well, I'll go ahead and move approval of these updates. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion carries. And now we'll move on to our final item, the federal, state, and local legislative updates. Mr. Ranieri.
Mr. Chairman, this is like a broken record. Every time we meet, we talk about federal lack of action, and there is some action, hopefully. The Congress and the President have agreed to a continuing resolution that will go through December 20th of this year. It passed the House, it has to go past the Senate, and we have to have the President's signature. The drama is that the current resolution expires tomorrow. So if this doesn't get done, there could be a threat of a shutdown. Now, what is in the resolution is the Census Bureau is fully funded to have a complete count. So that's a good positive thing. There's also an increase in salaries or pay for military personnel. There's also maintaining the caseload for low-income elderly who are part of the commodity supplemental food program. So that's continuing with a flat caseload. And then there are no policy riders, but there's nothing dealing with pro or con for the wall on the southern border. And I think that's what the President wanted, was nothing to limit the wall. So that may come later, and that's always going to be a problem as we go along. I'll stop for any questions about what's happening at the federal level.
Questions on that? Council Vice Chair Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I was just hoping, Mr. Ranieri, you can sort of define the CR or continuing resolution for our visitors.
Sure. Mr. Chairman and Council Vice President, a continuing resolution is a document, becomes almost like a law passed by Congress that basically takes the existing budget and moves it forward, continues it for a specific period of time. Now, why are we doing this now? Because most of us think budgets start on January 1st, but the federal budget starts on October 1 of each year. So we're into fiscal year 2020, and we're 2 months into it, and there's no budget. So in effect, to fund the government, it's a continuing resolution, or a CR, is necessary. And it's anticipated that on December 20th, there may be another continuing resolution, and hopefully Congress then would pass all of their appropriations bills and get them to the President, hopefully in January. Because this is in lieu of passing appropriation bills. And there are 12 appropriation bills, and not one of them has reached the President or the floor of the House or Senate.
And the fact that there is funding for seniors, as well as increase in military salaries, means the likelihood of this getting done is probably greater than maybe some other times. Would you agree?
Mr. Chairman, Council Vice President, I would agree. You always try to find a sweet spot, and I think that they found it here.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Thank you so much.
Another thing I forgot to add, and this is going to get confusing, there was some concern that there's a rule called, and it's named after a former Ways and Means Committee Chairman, Dan Rostenkowski from Illinois. Yeah, Chicago. And the Rostenkowski rule said that for the highway user fund, the gas tax bill, the trunk highway fund, or the federal highway fund, if those receipts are falling low and there's a deficit in that fund, the Department of Transportation must make up that deficit by cutting their budget. And I think if that rule went into effect, there would be a cut of about 12% across U.S. Department of Transportation's budget, including transit, bus purchases, things of that nature. The bill, that rule was in the Senate bill, and it was repealed on the floor by a vote of 80 to 20. So, and it was again it's in this resolution, so the Rostenkowski rule will not apply to the Department of Transportation for at least next couple months. At the state level, things are a little slow. The interim will probably pick up a little bit more in January, but there are some good news. The receipts for the first quarter of the fiscal year, and again, I just mentioned that the fiscal year at the federal level starts in October. At the state level, it starts on July 1. The total revenue receipts are about $5.1 billion. Total receipts, we have a 4% extra. We're 4% over estimates. And however, in the report that was released just a couple of days ago, the economy could be slowing down, so there's concern about that. And sometime at the end of this month, beginning of December, the infamous revenue forecast will be made public, and that will really forecast revenues for the next for the current biennium and possibly the next biennium. So we would have that forecast is important because that helps the governor set his budget for the next session, and then it will be confirmed or updated by a February forecast.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And also, there was a bus tour for the House Capital Investment Committee. I think some members were on the tour. I'm not sure if anyone went down into the stormwater tunnels, but several legislators did. The chair did not. The Senate tour, we're not yet scheduled. And then we've invited the governor to tour Minneapolis, but we haven't heard back. And then the capital budget is due to be released by statute by his budget sometime in January. I think it's January 15th. So we should know where we stand soon.
Great.
And at the Met Council, as you're aware, there is going to be a new person to be named chair of the Metropolitan Council. Cover letters and resumes are to be submitted by November 30th to Fu Yang Hoffman, who is the executive director of the Citizens League and who is volunteering to do this, and send him to the governor's office. They are going to look at applications and hopefully have them reviewed by the 6th and set up initial interviews from the 9th to the 13th. And I don't know when there would be a new chairperson named, but it could probably be hopefully sometime in the early part of late this year or early next year.
Excellent. Thanks for the updates. Any comments, questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Ranieri. We will go ahead and move to receive and file those updates. All those in approval say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And with that, having no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.